Hello. So today I'm gonna do a spine tutorial. I'm gonna try to do a little bit more complex of a tutorial than the last one. I'm gonna assume you've used the software and you've done some basics on it. And I'm just gonna quickly, or not so quickly, I'm gonna try to be quick and do a little demo on how you can fake some 3D in spine. For this, I'm gonna take a painting I found on the art gallery website, National Gallery of Art, Pierre Paul, I can't, I'm gonna butcher it, Pradhan is the painter, and it's of David Johnson. So I took this painting and I stuck it in Photoshop, and I'm using it as my sample. I've split it apart a little bit, so I've got the front, the shirt, the back of the shirt, and I'll supply all the assets. So if you want to give this a shot, you can. I've basically filled in some gaps so that there's a little bit of a space in the back and a little bit of a clear cutting. The head, I've given it a little bit more cheek so that there's a little bit more of a turn possible. And yeah, this is just like been clear cut, and I've used that as my sample. And then the spine, I have stuck the head in a bone called head. There's a shirt bone called shirt back, shirt front, and there's the background. So that's the basics of it. The background, person, head, shirt. That's it. And that's just a reference for myself. And yeah, and the layers are over here, and the reason why you see the head at the very top and yet it's behind the front of the shirt is because there's a draw or section over here. And if I put sections of the asset on the top of the hierarchy, they will just show up in front of everything else. So you don't need to worry about overlap because you can just adjust it in spine. In fact, you can adjust it in animation as well. So if you want to animate something back to front, this can be tweened. Yeah, so I'm gonna just show you how you could take a basic asset, which is painterly, obviously, and try to do some pseudo perspective on it. I'm gonna select mesh on it. I'm gonna go edit mesh. Now you can use the tracing option, so it generates it by itself, which you could use as a base. So like that's good enough as a base. And I'm gonna go okay, and I'm gonna dim, and I'm gonna isolate it. Dim is a lot better for actual paintings. I think the last thing I did was an actual character that was black, so dim was doing the reverse of what I wanted. But this is a better option. Now what I'm doing is I'm quickly switching between these three options: modify, create, delete, by using right click. So if I right click and I go add, right click again, twice, I can move it. And yeah, I can quickly do a basic outline. Now the goal here is when you want to do something that's like pseudo perspective, you need to use as little points as humanly possible, and then you can build up afterwards. So you need to use like the equivalent of like a 3D box. Like if you can get away with like 9 points, that'd be great. Obviously, I might not be able to do that, but whenever there doesn't need to be a turn, I'm gonna not make a turn. Like I can put that chin as just two objects. And again, don't stress if you're clear cutting by accident and you cut the piece of the head off. That's fine. You can just work minimal, and once you've got a minimal setup like this, maybe even less. Let's make the ear just two planes like this. Yeah, yeah, good enough. And there you go. How many? See the bottom? You can actually see I've got 18 points. Yeah, let's see if I can do 17. Yeah, there we go. 17 points. That's good enough. Yeah, good enough for the base model. Now, with semi-fake 3D, the logic is you have the basic mesh, and then you have a guidance bone of some kind. I'm gonna enable the bone view so you can actually see the bones. Not that you can actually see much because they're just little dots. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a guide. So the way this works is, you go new bone, is you have a guide switch, like in this case I'll call it a tilter because it tilts the body. Let's make the color red and let's give it a special icon so that you know it's actually unique. So you have a guidance bone which would theoretically control the movement of the head, and the head has its own bone, which is fine. Becomes a game of which bone's weight is going to take control at which time. So I'm going to, just so that I don't accidentally click on things, I'm going to disable selection on the shirt and on the shirt front, on the background. Oh, it's okay. It's already disabled, and I'll leave it on for the mesh. So now I can't physically click on anything apart from the head and the bone. Okay, so I'm gonna click on the head. I'm gonna click bind, and I'm gonna select the parent bone. Okay, so this will do nothing because it already was a child of that head, so that's fine. I'm gonna move the tilter one level up so it's underneath the person level. So the tilter is the same level as the head. And in the head bone, I'm also going to, in the head mesh, I'm gonna bind this, which is not gonna do anything because if I click on weights here, you'll see everything's blue because the head is taking control. You can click on overlay, you can see there's only one point of weight. But now, what I can do is I can start messing around a little bit. Now, you theoretically should have the parent controlling the outside of this model and the pseudo 3D effect controlling the inside of this model a little bit. I'm going to go back to edit mesh and give it some beginning points to control. So let's say I want this to be a beginning point. By the way, this is orange because I click and drag. So I can click and drag, and this, I want these two to be controlling points, maybe these two to be controlling points. And now I've got these. I'm going to disable overlay for a second. I got these tiny points to select the tilter on. So I can command click or option click on these points, and now these are selected. And I can click on add, and I click on the tilter, and I'm going to give it this like, let's make it like 50 strength at a big size. Now the tilter, and I click on here. Now the tilter has some control over this. So half of the weight goes to the head, half of it goes to the tilt. So when I move this, you can see the head has control and the tilt has control. So if I, like, for example, if I move this over here and I click on the head and I click on weights again, maybe overlay, you can see this has been moved because this is now way over here. That's the basic idea of weight management. Now, even though this is way over here, let me just give this a less strong. Like, let's make it like, so if it was here, let's put it like here. Okay, so even though it's currently not in its default place, this is a good way to adjust things. Currently, it's in a little bit to the left, and I kind of want to have the right side of this body be a little bit less controlled by the tilter. So I'm going to select the direct, and I'm going to click on the tilter, and these three are selected. So I'm just going to lower that a little bit so that it's not as extreme. Yeah, there we go. Lower that a little bit. This is you're gonna have to like eyeball this stuff. So this is why it's good to move this around, because you're gonna be eyeballing a lot. So now you can see when this moves over here, this has less control. This has a lot more control, which is good because it's a three-quarter view. So this should have a lot more control than this. Okay, so it's gonna move here, it's gonna move there. And you can see this has barely any points on it whatsoever, and it's already kind of working out. Okay, now let's go with this and start more micro adjustments. Now you've got the head, but the head has an ear and some hair. So I'm gonna select this and add a couple of more controllers. I'm gonna give this controller here, maybe one here, and that goes down to here. Okay. So again, still minimal. You can control things a lot easier when you have like 29 points instead of having like 100 points and you gotta have to like micro adjust all these things. Okay. Now, because we already had the weights, now if I click on overlay, it's gonna try to help me by giving me some suggestion weights, which are based off the rough halfway point between this weight and this weight. So if I tilt, it's actually not going to make much of a difference. It's good. But now, because I've got so much, not a little bit more points, not so much more points, I can go into weights and click on overlay. I'm going to click on this one because I don't want it to be as strong. So I'm going to lower it a little bit more, lower a little bit more, and maybe make this higher and not lower. There we go. So now I can do a lot more. You'll see there is a cutoff point. So with these 2.5 perspective characters, there is a cutoff point. You can't just go full 3D. You should limit yourself a little bit, not too much. So you should try to find where the balance is between. This looks like it's a semi 3D looking model, and this is gonna break if I adjust this too much. Okay, so I've got a basic understanding here. This is gonna move. Now let's do the eyes. So I click on edit mesh. Again, I'm gonna just put one line. Now, when this line is orange, it means do not mess with any pixels in between this point. So even if it warps, it's gonna warp as a single line. So it's not gonna tear or stretch this line whatsoever. It's gonna tear and stretch everything around it. So there is a downside to this. But if you're gonna make some guides, this is a great way to see exactly what's happening. So I'm gonna put one right in the eyes and see what happens there. And now I'm gonna click on the weights. I'm gonna weights, and I'm gonna start micro adjusting this. Adjust this here. Oops. Oh, I haven't selected anything, so I'm just gonna, oops. Maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more. Again, it's 3/4 perspective, so this should have more focus than the other side. There we go. Okay, maybe not. Yeah, because the eyebrow itself has a lot more weight. Now it kind of like has a very similar amount of weight now, but it's not perfect. You're gonna really need to adjust with the, especially with like the eyes and the mouth. You're gonna need to spend like a while tweaking the mouth and the eyes just so that you have the perfect, like, it's not gonna look weird, but it's also gonna be able to actually turn. There we go. There we go. Adjustments. Okay. Now I can see like it's like warping, like it's going on an angle because the chin is staying static. So I'm gonna give the chin a little bit of a weight. Maybe this much. Okay. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, let's see what's happening here. Let's take a look. Okay, I'm gonna make this stay like this on purpose and fix it from that angle. So I'm gonna go to overlay mode. Like you can see there's a lot of weight here and just not enough weight on the other side. So I'm just gonna give it more weight. A lot more weight. It's okay if it's warping, that's fine. All you care about is the metal spots. And tweak that. Tweak that. Should give it a little bit of an angle. Maybe a little bit less. Okay. Hmm. This is gonna be tough, isn't it? Okay. This is a point where I might need to say like, okay, so this is not gonna be able to move that much, like in terms of like Y space. Let's give this a little bit more of a wait on the parent. Interesting. So the eyes are moving in the right way, but the eyebrows are not. So, see, this is why it's nice to go with a little bit and then go with a lot. Because now I can go like, all right, the eyes are moving, the eyebrows are not falling, so I'm gonna give the eyebrows more points. So I'm gonna give the eyebrow a point here and a point here. This does not need to remain static, so I can just leave that as a normal point. I'm gonna zoom in and go, okay, let's try to adjust it so it's actually on the eyebrow. Okay, I'll give it one more point. One more point. There, one here, one here. There we go. Okay. And the weights. So let's give this. So this is what, 45? And so I'm going to make that match. So I'm going to say this is also 45. Maybe because, and this is 34. Okay, so I'm going to make it 40 to make it like somewhere between. Okay. All right. Okay, good. So let's keep tweaking. Let's keep tweaking. Let's keep adjusting, tweaking. A little bit more. This is not balanced. So I need to give this a balance between these 2 points. Neither is this. This needs more balance. A bit more here. Okay, that's a little bit better. Now, one thing that's extremely good for these kind of setups is to have a counterweight. So you might not need it, but it's also good to have in the beginning just in case you do. So I'm going to make a new bone. I'm going to call this the tilter counter. And I'm going to get this like, I don't know, maybe like a down. I don't know. It doesn't really matter because we're not going to touch this actually, but we're going to have this. It just exists here. And we're going to give the counter a transform constraint, which means it's going to, let's go a counter. It's going to move relative to the tilter. So I've given this a transform constraint. I clicked on the tilter as the guide. You can see that the target is tilter. I'm going to click match once and then I'll click link sliders. So if you put this at 100, when you move the tilter, the counter moves. So it doesn't do much because it's like it's basically copying exactly what the parent's doing. But if I make this negative, like negative, I don't know, negative 50, let's make it negative 50. Okay, so now when this moves up, this moves down, left, right. And that's quite useful. So now I'm going to bind the counter as well. And what I'm going to do is very carefully, I'm going to select all of these. Maybe this one too, maybe this, basically the outline of the hair back. And I'm going to give this a weight for the counter. So maybe make this like 10, just a tiny bit. And maybe like at the very end here, I'm going to make this like 15. And when I move this, okay, see how like, there we go. See what's happening? So when this moves left, that moves right. So that means when I'm moving this left, this mesh is moving right, which creates the back of the head have more perspective. So if I click on this again, I can even add more. So I'm gonna give this like 20, 23 and 23. I'll give this like, maybe like, the smudge 16. Yeah, you can really see the benefit here. So I'm gonna keep tweaking it. Now there's a danger. The more you add weights, it's the same as if you add more and more bones. Sorry, not bones. Points. You're gonna be fixing a lot of issues if you're gonna keep adding counter like weights and stuff. So it's better not to add too much because you really will regret it once you start adding too much. But if you just want to tweak a tiny bit, and I do mean a tiny bit, like in the 5-10 range, then this should be a-okay. Because if you delete this, like if I just delete the counter, this mesh is still fine, and that's the goal here. This counter is like a plus. It's like a finessing thing. There we go. Okay. Now, of course, it's not perfect. There's a lot of issues because this has a very low point count. But I mean, honestly, you could spend hours fine tweaking this, and maybe you should because it's fun. It's also quite rewarding. The head, for example, the next stage of the head would be adjusting more. So if I click on edit, I'm gonna give this like 2 more points, put that up here. Same with this, 2 more points, put it up here to match the eye line. I'm gonna give this 2 more points, put that down here. Actually, not here. Give this 2 more points. Give this. I'm gonna not dim this just because I'm having a hard time looking at this because it's so dark. So I'm gonna just click here. There we go. Okay, here's a couple more points. And now the good news is if it messes up, it really messes up. So you can really adjust things. So I'm going to click add on the tilter weight. Yeah, I'm going to see if I can do anything about that nose. I'm going to give this, nope. Because if you're moving up, the nose should be moving up too. I'm going to click on direct. I end up just using direct way too much, which you can only really do if you don't have that many points, but it becomes more and more difficult. I'm going to see what I can do about that middle of the lips. Oops. Okay, that's a bit better. That's a bit better. Okay. Okay, good. Okay. Now, yeah. Okay. Now, yeah, you can keep going. You should keep going because this is gonna be just like, I don't know, a little fun exercise. I'm gonna show you where I ended up with this model, so I don't spend an hour just clicking points. This is where I ended up going with this. So if I click on dim, I broke the points up even more. I added the bottom layer of the eyes, the top layer of the eyes, and the nose. I kept adding points, and the lips. I kept adding lip, like the top lip and the bottom lip. But again, this doesn't have too many points. This is about as like many as you should be going. If you keep going with more, it's just gonna look messy. But this is still readable. And yeah, this is not linked up yet. This is just barren. I think I've got a different version with the links on it, but this is the same idea. So now you've got the basic understanding of how a turn would work. I'm gonna show you the next version. I'm gonna discard. So this is easy. Again, this is where I ended up. Now this has the weights on it. So if I click on the weights, you can see same logic, more on the left, less on the right. And if I click on this, you can see you can turn it to about here, and then maybe at the top you can turn it to about here before it breaks, and on the side you can turn it to about here before it breaks. Now if you want to go back to Photoshop and give this guy a neck, that will be great, because I didn't, make a Photoshop neck, but probably should have one. And then what I did was I clicked on the mesh and then clicked on edit for the shirt. And with the shirt, I did an auto trace, and I did the exact same logic with the shirt. So the shirt also is bound to this, not this file, the next version, but the shirt has the exact. And I'm just going to show you the next logic. Discard. So this shirt has a couple points. If I click on weights, you can see it's leaning on the head as well. So now the head has the shirt has the head's weights. The back of the shirt has the head's weights. And if I start moving this around, you can see the shirt is countering to the head, which gives it more perspective. If I click on the background, just so you know, so look, it's weird. Okay, there we go. Okay, there we go. Okay, and what I've done is after, and I mean like after, like when you're fully cool with the shirt and the head and where everything is, then you can look at adding more minute controls. So in this case, I added the brow, which I've just placed underneath the tilter. So when the tilter moves, the brow moves, because it's a child. Same with the mouth. They're children of the brow. And I've bound a little bit of the weight from the brow as well. And I do mean a little bit. Like, this is still predominantly the head, but it's also a little bit of the brow. The mouth is, the mouth has a lot more, but it's all underneath the tilter. So if I did nothing to these bones, the tilter is still going to be the one in charge of everything. So, but because I did this, I can now tweak a little bit, so I can give this like a little bit more weight. If the mouth has a lot more weight, so I can pluck her and control it like that. I can move this a little bit like this. You're low. So, and you can add more. So you can add one for the eyes. So you can have a blink. You can add one for the nose. You can add one like maybe over here for the cheeks. Like if I had more time, I would add one for the cheeks. So if you can smile. You can add one for the hair. There's just a million ways you can go with this. But even with just 3 bones, if I click on animation, you can see he moves just fine. Sorry, that's my dog snoring. Yeah, so this is the same logic. This is the same basic structure. This is just a bunch of weights that are being distributed, and everything is just being moved by one bone. I'm just gonna hide the bones for a second, and yeah, it looks pretty decent for what essentially is a pseudo 3D mesh cobbled together from a basic like 2D image. Yeah, I hope that's of help to anyone. Thanks for your time.